Welcome everyone. This is our first town hall of the UniverCity Community Association. Yay for that. So please bear with us through any bumps and bruises and things like that as we move along, but we're really happy to see the turnout here. It's really fantastic to see all of you have come out to hear what we have to say. My name is Teresa Burley. I'm the current president of the UniverCity Community Association, and
I'm Christy, and I'm head of the Communications Committee.
Okay, so to get us started, I'd like to begin by acknowledging that our community rests on the traditional, unceded traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples of the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh nations. For me, acknowledging these traditional territories is really important because it reminds us to be mindful about the ongoing impacts of colonization on the first peoples of this land. So, the purpose of this gathering is to introduce the UniverCity Community Association. So that's kind of why we put this whole thing together, because we wanted to announce we're here. We'll tell you a little bit more why in a minute, and provide an opportunity for others to share some information about our community, sort of past, present, and future. To this end, we have invited Gordon Harris. He's the president and CEO of the SFU Community Trust. Want to wave, Gordon? Dale Mikkelsen, he's the VP of Development for the Trust over here. And they're going to chat with us about the history of UniverCity, some background and information on social sustainability, infrastructure ownership, maintenance, and what's to come in the next few years. We also have with us here Joanne Curry, External Relations from SFU. Thank you so much for coming. And Elizabeth Starr, she's the campus planner on the new Build SFU 2065. I knew there was a number in there. And they're here to talk to us about broader initiatives such as the gondola and the SFU Burnaby 2065, see I have it right here, Campus Master Plan Project. We'd also like to acknowledge that we have Philip Kuligowski-Chan from Terry Beach's office at the back. Thank you for coming, Philip. Terry actually wanted to come but wasn't able, so Philip has come to speak with us. He's our Member of Parliament for Burnaby North Seymour. And if there's any follow-up, any questions you have from him, his email's at the front, I think. Great. And most especially, we would like to thank Mr. Winterlich and Mr. Harding of University Highlands Elementary for supporting this initiative, for helping us set up chairs and bring out all the things. So a big hand for Mr. Winterlich at the back as well. And also our university, not university, what's the PAC name? University Highlands Parent Advisory Council has nicely provided childminding, so if any of you brought children, they're in the library with them. And Nestor's provided coffee and cookies for us tonight. Yeah, very nice. Okay, this one's gone. Okay, so to get started, we wanted to share some information about the UniverCity Community Association. I'm just going to say UCA because I trip over it every time. And we were formerly known as the SFU Community Association. The purpose of our association, and this is right now, we're kind of newly independent, so we're still forming things out, but right now is to initiate programs and projects that enhance UniverCity, foster a sense of community, and support residents, merchants, and community stakeholders. So the original entity, the SFU Community Association, was established in 2002 to address matters of mutual interest to UniverCity community and help facilitate communication between residents, the Trust, SFU, and other stakeholders. Membership in the Community Association is generally members, each strata will have a member, and as new buildings open, members are added to our community. And as of late, we've been meeting a little more frequently, which is monthly. So far, the association has been a really great tool for keeping residents informed and community members and providing an avenue for us to provide input. Recently, we have moved to make this community association an independent entity from the Trust and focus more on community issues with the very wonderful support of the Trust. The SFU Community Trust has pledged to provide us with $5,000 a year for the next 5 years, and during this time we'll investigate other avenues of financial support for our volunteer organization. Thank you, Gordon, very much for that. Okay, so now I'd like to give it over to Christy, and she's going to talk about a little bit of the work that the UCA has done over the last few years.
Okay, so what we've been doing. We've been meeting regularly with the Community Trust for updates on development. We share important information such as break-ins and other urgent matters. We have partnered with SFU and the Trust to bring you Street Fest 2018. I hope you went. If you didn't, look forward to next year. It was a huge success. We had over 55 vendors and well over 2,000 people attended. And that was people who live, work, and play on the mountain. We created a communications committee to help us with the transition into an independent organization so we can increase awareness of the association and its work, create a communication plan, plan this town hall, build a web presence, and generally make sure that we are staying in touch with the community and that they can stay in touch with us. We've also worked on traffic-related issues. Some residents initiated a survey for issues on University Crescent in particular, around speeding and the desire for speed bumps. So we formed a safety committee, and they will be starting to meet soon. The committee would also be looking into issues like evacuation in case of an emergency, and the tank farm, etc. By the way, we are looking for committee members. So if you're interested, please let us know. There's a sign-up sheet at the entrance. And that's for all our committees, by the way. The UCA Granting Committee is a unique committee that was formed in 2011, giving out about $3,000 every year. This year in particular, they supported the carnival that is held on the grounds of the school, as well as a community cleanup. To date, the committee has awarded just under $68,000 in grant funds for the community projects and programs at UniverCity. Yeah, pretty impressive. Yeah. So, and we intend to keep this grant going. So you'll be hearing more about how to apply for these monies. The Garden Committee manages 94 garden plots at the Nahino Park community and works with over 53 community residents and has been involved in negotiations with SFU to renew the operating license agreement for another 3 years. Other issues that have come up on our radar recently, light pollution from the new construction, desire for a dog park, garbage and dumping, and jurisdiction and ownership over roadways and pathways. All of these are very complicated issues, and we spend a lot of time in our association meetings trying to figure out who's responsible, how we can help, what we can do to help the residents get better results, to ask better questions, to improve our community and work together as a community to negotiate solutions. Overall, the UCA is committed to building community for everyone on the mountain, and we are really excited to be part of this initiative and lead into the future. So I'm going to give this over to you.
Great, so that kind of sums up what the UCA is all about. I just wanted to, on a personal note, say that I've lived here since 2005, and it's the best place I've ever lived. My kids can run around here, they're safe. I walk to get a haircut, I walk to work. I'm soon going to be able to walk to go to a clinic and see somebody. The amenities we have up here have grown immensely in the last few years, and the sense of the community is just astounding. For an example, tomorrow is Halloween. We're doing a candy drive for the people who live in the center of the community, because we kind of get a lot of the kids who come from the towers who can't trick or treat. And so far, about 25 families have donated candy to my house for me to give out to people who need it. And tomorrow I'll have about 400 kids come to my house. And Nesters is coming this year, and we're going to have hot chocolate and coffee, and we block off our streets. So, I mean, this is just sort of, it's like something you see in a movie. It's kind of magical. So we're all really fortunate and lucky to live here. And on that note, I would like to invite Gordon Harris up here to talk to us a little bit about our community and all the things. Come on up, Gordon.
Thank you. Thanks. Now, do I need the microphone? Or I suppose I do if you're recording? It's up to you. I do need it? It's on? Good. Thank you very much, and thanks for inviting me and us to be here tonight. This is a wonderful step along the path of the transition at UniverCity. And to have the UCA now hosting and organizing a meeting like this really means a lot to us. And you heard it described as kind of a magical place. And it's only getting to be more so as time goes on and we have more people living here, and as the Trust plays a diminishing role in the life of the community, and the community plays a greater role in the life of the community. So I couldn't be happier. So really happy to be here. Now, some of you, and starting with 2005, you moved here. Some of you have been here from the very beginning. Others of you are brand new. So I thought it'd be useful just to spend a few minutes. And when I said earlier to Teresa I was going to spend a few minutes, it was automatically assumed I would spend a lot of time. I tend to do that. I'll try to be a little more efficient tonight. Simon Fraser University is a very young university. It opened its doors in 1965. And it serves a very large community. It is in the geographic center of Metro Vancouver, although it's on what has for 50 years been a relatively isolated hilltop location. This community is changing how that location looks and feels. So it is central to the region, and there had always been a notion that there would be a community on Burnaby Mountain. It wasn't necessarily going to be where it is, or it wasn't going to take the form it has taken, but there was always a notion in the minds of the architects of Simon Fraser University, Arthur Erickson and Jeff Massey, that there would be a community, and that was left for later. And later tried to surface a few times. In the early 70s, when Pauline Jewett was the president of the university, there was an initiative to create a community. The economy at the time didn't support that. Another attempt in the early 80s, similarly, that wasn't the time to do it. By the time we got to the mid-90s, things were looking very different in the lower mainland. And perhaps it was time. And so there was a need identified for a couple of things. One, the university, like all other post-secondary institutions in the province, was looking for other sources of revenue to support its core activities of mission of teaching and research. And it was really looking for a way to animate the campus, to make it more than a suburban commuter campus, to have people who were here on a Friday after 5 o'clock and might even be here through the weekend, which wasn't the case before the community came along. And so the other part of that in the mid-90s, as the Brundtland Commission was finalizing its report and people were talking about sustainability in a very different way for the first time in the mid-90s, the notion that this could also be, in addition to creating endowment wealth and a livable community that could bring international acclaim to Burnaby and to Simon Fraser University, it could also be something of a more sustainable community. And John Stubbs, who was the president at the time, readily acknowledges nobody knew quite what that meant at the time. But we've taken it to heart, and we work very hard to ensure that we are a low-carbon community, highly livable, affordable, and sustainable. And so I think anyone who was involved in those early days would recognize the vision they had is being realized, and if they could look at a room full of people at a community-led town hall, I think everybody would agree we've achieved a lot of the objectives already. So the idea was to serve the university. The conditions are essentially the land is owned by Simon Fraser University. The trust is, in effect, an intermediary. We are a master developer of those lands entrusted to us by the university. And as a master developer, when we're finished too. We are done. And all of you are residents of the city of Burnaby, and we will begin, or are beginning, a process of transition over the next 3.5, 4 years that will see the trust fade to black, to see the city of Burnaby become much more engaged in the life of the community. And I have a card in my pocket with the phone number of the Director of Planning and Building at the City of Burnaby, and every time there's a question, I'm going to pull that card out and give you a phone number. So I think, and for those skeptics in the room, there it is. And so I think it's really important to help reinforce that connection to the City of Burnaby. You've already got a great connection to Simon Fraser University, to the Trust, and I think it is our job and responsibility to help foster that transition to that next step, which is the municipality. The Trust operates at arm's length from the university. We are a private company that is the trustee of lands owned by Simon Fraser. We have an independent board of directors, so we work independently of the university, although senior members of the administration at the university, including Professor Petter, Joanne Curry, and others, are on our board of directors. We have a larger number of independent directors guiding the policy that is of creating UniverCity. The notion of being independent and separate is that we can be more agile, more responsive. We speak the language of development as well as the language of the institution. And so, as we started thinking about what the development is going to look like, from the very beginning, there was an active community engagement process. And some of you here may have taken place in the very early days in that process. By the year 2000, there was a design charrette. 4 teams came together to demonstrate their vision of what the community itself could be. That also engaged the university, students, faculty, staff, people elsewhere in Burnaby and throughout the region in a discussion about what this community should look and feel like and how it should serve both the university and the city. Because there weren't residents at the time, we created a group that could, we thought, mimic how a community might respond and react to things we were doing and planning. And so that community advisory committee was made up of students, faculty, staff, stream keepers, people from the province, from the city, federal government, some non-governmental organizations, municipal planning staff. And really, they were the sounding board. So ideas were tested with them, and they existed until such time as there were people living here who had a much greater stake in what was going to happen on Burnaby Mountain. And that was the genesis of the SFU Community Association, which has now transformed itself into the University Community Association, UCA. Yes, I can see why you trip over it. So the notion of a very urban kind of community in a suburban setting, walkable, compact, and really family-oriented. And I think in that regard, we've achieved, again, a number of the objectives. This is a map worth taking a few minutes to look at. These are the lands that were in the late 1990s, the subject of a negotiation between the city of Burnaby and the university, and a total of 385 hectares of SFU lands, endowment lands. And we took 65 hectares of that, in other words, took 320 hectares and added those to the Burnaby Mountain Conservation Area, and in return were able to develop the east and south neighborhoods and the university, the east neighborhood, which is about 20.3 hectares out of that total of 65 rather. A number of years ago, when we started to really get into detailed planning in that blue area, it occurred to us that's probably not particularly developable. It's steep, there are watercourses, there's significant vegetation as environmental regulations changed and there were greater setbacks from top of bank for creeks. And it was relatively disconnected from the community we were building. We decided to leave that alone and focus our attention on building out what you see in either yellow or green, depending on whether you're as colorblind as I am or not. And so that's what we're building, and I think what is significant about that is the vision. This is a 2000 model from the design charrette that was held. This is was the winning submission by what was then Hotzenbach Architects, now Dialogue Design Studio. It looks a lot like the community does today. And this is displayed in the lobby at Dialogue's offices. And it's, I like going in there and looking at it and being reminded that that vision has held really well over time. So at the very beginning, one of the things we were able to do was, while there's some tree clearing that simply had to occur, a lot of this development is on what used to be surface parking lots, student parking. And we've eliminated about 2,000 parking spaces. And I used to say, and no one's complained, it turns out I'm wrong, people do complain, but really only a couple of times a year at convocation is it a big problem that so much parking has been eliminated. And we're going to address that as we finish the development by providing some additional underground parking for SFU on parcel 24. But there it is getting started. The water tower is there, the water tower building was there, and the building we're in tonight was there. and a water pump station just to the west of what is now the elementary school that we relocated to make room for future development. So a couple of things that are really important, I think, in looking at what we're doing and how we got to where we are tonight and where we'll be in the next 48 months. The project had to be economically viable, and in most speeches I give, I say if it isn't economic, it isn't sustainable. The project has to work. If we're existing to create endowment wealth for the university, there has to be money made, but at the same time, that doesn't mean we can't also be global leaders in low-carbon community development, to do things like this elementary school, the child care center that is the greenest child care center on the planet, a district energy system that when SFU comes on board as a customer will reduce greenhouse gas emissions on Burnaby Mountain by over 80%. It's not just another suburb. This is a very unique community and unique in the world for achieving those kinds of objectives. One of the first things we did in the community, for the community, was build this town square. We built it on SFU land, which was clever of us because it wasn't land we were wanting to develop, but it became the very first link between the community and the university. And we've all used it at different times of day, different times of the year. We've had food carts, or food trucks, we've had buskers, the public market for a period of time. It's just one of those spaces where everybody wants to be there and wants to use it. And then as we move through time, and I'm skipping ahead in time a little bit to 2010 in this instance, the Nesters Market you heard tonight, every time there's an event, anything that goes on in this community, Nesters is there. They're just a brilliant corporate citizen, and they really are involved and care about what happens in this community. So they opened a 23,000 square foot grocery store way before there were enough people in this community to support it. So that was a big commitment by Bilo Foods and the parent company, Overweighty Foods, to UniverCity. 23,000 square foot store at a population of 5,000. That's enough people to support a grocery store like this. But they came in early. And so we worked together with them to make sure that they could afford to be here and we could afford to have them here long before the market for their goods and services was here. The Trust worked with them. For instance, they opened with a grocery store, a pharmacy, and a deli. SFU had a post office in the computer store on the back of Cornerstone Building that closed at the end of the day on Friday and closed at the end of each workday at 5:30 and wasn't open on the weekend. So we thought, let's take that postal outlet, franchise outlet, and give it to Nesters so that we would start to generate regular repeat traffic for the grocer and establish a community meeting place in the grocery store, the post office. And that was one of those things where everybody wins when that kind of partnership is created. Here's the building we're in. You walked by a construction site to get in here. This school opened in September 2010, and a wonderful partnership between the provincial government, the school board, the City of Burnaby, and the Trust. And the Trust was an active participant in supporting this financially in the early days, and we've participated in financial support for this expansion. So roughly 285 students in the school today. When those classrooms are finished and open in the fall of 2019, that adds another 176 students, and 3 spaces for before and after school childcare that'll be operated by the SFU Child Care Society, and that's another 75 spaces for students. It's a LEED Gold elementary school. It has a curriculum that is focused on sustainability and builds on what the community is doing. We're really pleased with the support we've had from the province over the years, and I think everybody was surprised that only 8 years in we would have to build that final tranche of 8 classrooms, reinforcing that it is, see what happens. How do you make that thing go away? Yeah. There we go. How do I get the slides back? That's fine, isn't it? Thanks, Danny. I've used up all my time just fiddling with it. Look at that. Thanks. Let's see what I can hit next. We all know the Child Care Center as well, and I want to pause long enough to single out Dale Mikkelsen. We had to build a Child Care Center as part of the zoning to carry on with the rest of the development in University. We didn't have to build this one. This is the greenest child care center on the planet, according to the founder of the International Living Future Institute. It will be it will meet the Living Building Challenge, we hope, within a year or so. One of the highest standards for green building, low-carbon building in the world. It generates more energy than it uses, harvests more water than it uses, no toxic materials in initial construction or lifetime operation. All of that's great. We built it for 18% below the cost of comparable code childcare centers that were being built at the time. That's a green building dividend, and that's what we've been continuing to try to achieve with our work here. And oh, that's interesting, but this, I'm sure, for many people was even more interesting. Yes, applause. Early on, I arrived here in 2007, and we canvassed the community. What do people like? What don't they like? What matters? What doesn't? What could we do better or next? And they identified that they wanted an elementary school. We didn't then have one. A child care center. We didn't then have one, except the toddler space at Verdant was just completing in 2008. We didn't have a grocery store. We didn't have a liquor store. And we didn't have a medical center. And so with the opening of the liquor store, that satisfied a lot of people. We're still working on the medical center deal. It's a complicated, really complex negotiation. We're getting closer. We're not quite there yet to make a formal announcement. But when this opened, this was a 4.5-year negotiation with the province, believe it or not. Because they build 6,000 square foot stores, we wanted a 3,000 square foot store. Well, we can't do that. Why not? Because we don't do that. And so eventually, by working through the kind of a partnership with the province, and the then minister was very supportive, we were able to get a 3,000 square foot liquor store at University. Something near and dear to my heart is public art, and this is just one example. Matthew Soul's Eco Somo on the High Street, which flanks 3 buildings. 2 different developers came together to help us create this 9-piece installation. What's important about our public art program is it's funded by our developers, and so we take contribution from them when we enter into the lease with them, and we work with the developer, their architect, an independent working artist, our public art consultant, and typically me, as the jury. And then we do a call for proposals, expressions of interest, and then we work through a selection process to get to the public art that we think best reflects the principles of University in terms of environment, economy, equity, and education. Really like to support emerging artists, but we also have some well-established artists doing work in the community as well. You heard mention of the Street Fest earlier, and I want to come back to that because I hope the theme is emerging here that everything we're doing is about partnerships, collaborations and partnerships, whether it's the Child Care Center, working with BC Hydro, the elementary school, working with the province and the school board. The Street Fest was the Community Association and SFU partnering, working together. And we had very little, we, the Trust, had very little to do with organizing this. And it was just wonderful to watch it come together and come together so well. And I want to remind everybody here that the mayor of Burnaby, Derek Corrigan, still the mayor, was at the Street Fest and vowed that the city of Burnaby would support the Street Fest next year financially. And I just want everybody to remember that. Oh, and if you need to. So, I'm almost done, believe it or not. The goal was a livable, affordable, sustainable community. We are halfway there. We have 5,000 people living in the community. Within the next 48 months, we will be somewhere above 9,000 people. That's significant growth in a 4-year period. Number of buildings that are currently underway. The Peak will be completed this year. Next door to it, next year, will be the terraces at the Peak. That's when the elementary school will be finished as well, the expansion 2019-2020. You'll see parcel 21, which is affordable rental housing. Fraser on parcel 31, Hamilton on parcel 19 will all be completed in 2020, as will be parcel 20, the site closest to the water tower. The district energy system in 2020 will be up and running with SFU as a customer, and parcel 33 will also be complete in 2020. These are on these boards here, and I'm just going to quickly rip through them, or I could just put that up. 2021, we'll see parcels 34, 35, and 36, 37 be completed, and that finishes the sweep of the crescent heading up back towards One University. 2022, parcel 24, the final mixed-use development on the High Street, the commercial precinct. Retail at grade, residential above. We hope there will be a seniors housing component in there. SFU has identified a number of uses it would like to see in that building, and you will hear more about that from Elizabeth and the East Gateway project, so I'll leave that for her. Happy to answer questions later. And in 2022, maybe pushing into the very early days of 2023, the trust office will close. We'll be done. We'll complete the public realm as soon as parcel 24 is finished, so we think 6 months after the occupancy permit is issued for parcel 24, we really should be done. And if we stick around longer, we're overhead. If we finish when the project finishes, we're ensuring that the maximum contribution to the endowment supporting teaching research can be realized. So that handover really is a handover to SFU in some measure, to the City of Burnaby, and to you as a community. And so we will be working very closely with everyone over the next 36 months to make sure that nothing is missed. Excuse me. As Dale and I described basically what we're producing are owner's manuals for each of those groups, for SFU and for the community and for Burnaby. It was mentioned earlier, and thank you for talking about the trust support of the Community Association historically. We have committed to continue funding the UniverCity Community Association for another 5 years. And we will step back further and further from it as time goes on, because we are now completely convinced that the UCA is capable of doing that, and we don't need to be a paternalistic organization trying to shape and control that. We are involved to the extent that Pansy Huey, who is our Director of Marketing and Community Relations, sits on the board of the association, is the treasurer. She is the link back to us in terms of making sure the money that I've blithely said we're going to give you will actually get to you. So be good to Pansy. She's way more helpful to you than I am. Other things we've supported, the Street Fest, the Summer Block Party, the Community Cleanup Day, the holiday lighting, all of those things. Those are community activities. And over time, those will be things that we will come up and watch and enjoy, but not necessarily have to do. And I'm thrilled about that. So community consultations, transition meetings, you'll be hearing more from us over the next 36 months. What matters, who you talk to. I'm now going to get it out one more time because is anyone from the City of Burnaby here tonight? No. So Lou Pelche is the Director of Planning and Building, 604-294-7130. It's on the board, one of the boards. It's really important that you come to recognize that you live in the City of Burnaby, and more importantly, for Burnaby to recognize you live in the City of Burnaby. And you know, the tax contribution you make annually to the City of Burnaby through your municipal taxes, somewhere at the moment in the order of about $3 million a year. That's real money. And for that, there are services you can reasonably expect to receive. So we would encourage you, and we will help you with that transition as well. I think I've said enough. I hope you've had a bit of time to look at the boards, and if not, you can do that after. And how far over my time did I go? That doesn't matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gordon, very much. Thank you. Okay, next I'd like to invite Elizabeth Starr to come up and speak with us about the SFU Burnaby 2065 Campus Master Plan. Thank you, Elizabeth. Welcome. Can't clap, like too much stuff. I can't clap.
Oh, yeah. Good evening. Thank you very much for having us, and what a great idea to put together your community association and to understand the history of where we've come from. Actually, and that is very much what I'm going to speak to, is that the campus master plan, we call it the Burnaby 2065 plan, is future looking. It's a long range plan that picks up from the last, the last plan was done in more than 50 years ago by Erickson and Massey Architects. And we all live a part of that plan today, but universities have changed tremendously, and we are now communities. We're now we have community partners that you spoke to, and we're also a destination, and we would like to even become more of a destination. So we've got a lot of work to do, and we're going to look at the long-range plans for what this place can be. We started this project in early 2018 with the anticipation of it taking 18 months. It's got a 50-year planning horizon, 2065, that's what the name means. And it's a focus, it focuses on the university lands and Burnaby Mountain, both the built and unbuilt areas. It's led by a multidisciplinary team of consultants, including experts in campus planning and design, landscape architecture, sustainability, transportation, civil engineering, etc. And it's grounded within the process of extensive consultation and communication with internal and external stakeholders, some of which are here tonight. The objectives of the plan are to align the evolution of the Burnaby physical campus with the mission of the university. I think that makes sense. We are still an academic institution. It will guide investment in and renewal of facilities, open spaces, and infrastructure in a holistic manner and help us prioritize those. It will support communities on and off the mountain. Though it's this campus, it's focused on this campus, we are increasingly aware that we are a part of a greater community, and we have 3 campuses, Vancouver and Surrey and Burnaby, and we need to think about how we connect those. It will identify places where we can accommodate growth in the future and yet be consistent with sustainable development practices. And we will continue to build a place of remarkable beauty with a distinct identity, which I think is what we're so fortunate to live and work and play within. Study too. So right now we are in phase 3 of the project. In the first 2 phases we interviewed over 45 stakeholders, and we did a campus compass survey, which was a geographically based survey. If you haven't done it, it's still up on our website, and you're more than welcome to take that survey. It's as I say, it's a geographic based survey. You kind of tell us about where you spend time on campus and what those places mean to you. We'd love to hear more about that. We did have 1,200 people do it, but we're still hopeful that more will do it. We hosted a very interesting future of the Burnaby campus and with an educational futurist and a panel of people who come with a series of expertise, whether it's related to demographics or community events, community celebrations, and that is on our It's not on our website. It will be on the website in the next week. So you can listen to that. It was a fascinating discussion. And we've also drafted a strategy for Indigenous engagement throughout the process. And we want to weave this plan with themes and installations of indigenization. I always stumble over my words, but it is very much a foundation of the plan. In the next while, in November, we'll have a workshop, it's a visioning workshop with the stakeholders that were interviewed in the earlier process, and that's an invited workshop, and At that, we will review the guiding principles for the plan, the physical directions that we've worked on, and we will talk about some big moves, things that will structurally change the campus, potentially, if they're supported. And then in January, we will go to public open houses, which you will all know about, and please attend. So that's the campus master plan. The other project that Gordon referred to is the East Gateway study. It was a blue skying event. We worked with Perkins and Will. We talked about what the East Gateway could be. Yeah, and there's a rendering. Yeah, if we look at the rendering, just to locate us, here's Town Square, here's Cornerstone, here's the new Parcel 24 building, and we're looking to the east. So again, this was a plan that was talking about how we were going to deal with transit and transportation, because here we see very different bus drop-off and pick-up. It will be changed to a street-oriented type of thing where the storage of buses will be actually in and behind the building here. You can see the buses back in here. So they actually come in and come out and pick up, so it's a very different function than it is currently. That means a whole new gateway for the university, a new intersection between the residential commercial area and the academic area. We see it as a place that will be where we'll celebrate the intersections of all those events coming together. And the goal of this project was to help the trust develop a package for the developers and to let them know what we might want to add to the project, what it might look like. As you can see, there's some reference to the Erickson Massey fenestration and building materials, but new and livelier. There's definitely public realm areas, an expansion of the Townie Down Square, and also where the gondola might land. And so I'll let Joanne go from there.
Great. What a great lead up. Thanks, Elizabeth. Great. So how many people here have heard of the gondola concept? Yes. I did notice too, about 4 or 5 people did tick out a gondola as something that they'd like to see, and that didn't even include my vote out there, so that's great. Thank you for inviting me to come here to give you an update on the gondola project, and it sounds like people are familiar with it. It's a project that the Community Trust began in earnest in 2009, which is just over 10 years ago. And they proposed a project that really did catch the interest of TransLink, they prepared a feasibility study, and then TransLink did a full business case on it. There was a lot of interest at that time in 2011 when the business case was prepared, but politically and other reasons the timing wasn't right, and there were other regional priorities like the Evergreen Line, for example. It did, however, come into the regional transportation strategy of TransLink, and it's also included in the 10-year vision of the Mayor's Council with TransLink. So most recently, a few months ago, TransLink released an updated feasibility study or case that looked at the benefit to cost ratio. And maybe I'll just give a little bit of background. It sounds like people are familiar with the project, but this would be a very high capacity system that would link from Production Way up to around where the bus loop is, or Elizabeth referred to it. The entire trip time would take 6 minutes, so it halves the commute time of people. And most importantly, right now, particularly students are very frustrated with very long waits. The bus from Production Way up to the hill is rated among the top, or bottom rather, 10% of bus routes in the Lower Mainland. And so often it's like about a 20-minute average wait time. There are very few universities on top of a mountain. If anyone knows of another Canadian or other university, let me know. But we love the beautiful views from here, but it does make transit very difficult for people. It is a regional project. We have 25,000 people coming up and commuting using public transit primarily up to the Burnaby campus, and that's forecasted to grow to 40,000. So you can see some of the reasons why TransLink and all of the commuters are very interested in this potential solution. And it would be the first incidence of this for a transit operation in Canada. You know, people are more familiar with gondolas and ski hills, but this is your serious transit gondola. So the good news is it is in the TransLink's Phase 2 investment plan, and the recent benefit to cost study that I referred to showed it as an incredibly good transit investment. In fact, the TransLink CEO said it's among the best benefit to cost ratios that they've seen for a transportation project. So it's a 1.8 to 1 benefit to cost. It is fast, reliable, and one of the benefits since 2009, there's been a lot more of these type of gondolas throughout the world, in addition to the Portland one, Colombia, other places, Mexico City. So they've been proven taking thousands and thousands of people every day up and down mountaintops. I did mention about the travel time, and a lot of the benefit in the benefit cost ratio is savings of people's time, but there's also a significant benefit in terms of clean transportation, so a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. It provides, and I think this is very important to the residents as it is to the students, but we do have a few snowstorms occasionally, and so the idea of having an alternative transit option off the mountain or up the mountain in some cases is really important, and that's not even factored into this benefit and cost. That's an additional benefit to safety. And there's other things that could happen besides snow, you know, unfortunately forest fires, earthquakes, incidences at the tank farm. I could go on, but it might depress us all or scare us. But it just provides that alternative access route. It does also have some benefits, again, not in the benefit to cost ratio for tourism and recreation. We're already known as a very top spot for recreational biking, and this would enhance it. And for those of you that are cyclists, there also is opportunities. Right now, a bus only carries 2 bikes up a hill, and this would allow entire cars, which are at about a 33-person capacity, to also take a group of cyclists up the hill. So I think getting up and down will be more advantageous. So we are currently awaiting the next meeting of the Mayor's Council. TransLink is ready to go to finalize some of the costing contained in the proposal. We have a huge turnover of mayors, changes of mayors, and so there's going to be lots of discussion. I hear there's some issues in Surrey that they want looked at right away, but we think this is a really important project whose time has come. The reason why we have to do it, I think, now or this next year is that the biggest inflationary cost between 2011 and the current cost benefit is real estate. And so if we delay it more and more years, it's only going to get more unaffordable. And so the time is now. It releases 26 diesel articulated buses to be deployed in other parts of the region. And so it's very much seen as a regional project. The final reason is that there is a funding envelope called the Green Infrastructure Fund that's available federally with provincial match. And so we feel, and Gordon and all the colleagues at SFU and our president, we're working hard because we would really like to have serious consideration of this project and have it move forward. I should add, our president calls it Skybus. That's his preference. And I hear the Premier also really likes that term too. We will be coming out with some more information in the weeks ahead, and we really will need all of your support and to ensure voices are heard that are supporters of the gondola. We'll also be doing, with TransLink, thorough community consultations for all communities potentially affected, just to make sure that they're aware of the benefits of the gondola and they understand performance and any concerns are alleviated. So that is my 4-minute pitch. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joanne. That was amazing. Dale, I'd like to welcome up Dale Mikkelsen, the Vice President of Development of the Trust. Thank you.
Do I go forward or back, Pansy? Forward? just keep moving forward. Okay, good. They save the dry stuff for the end when you're falling asleep. So, yeah, I'm going to talk about this place and really the infrastructure that surrounds you, how it works, who owns it, who operates it, who to talk to. Do you have that card? In the future. So yeah, I mean, you've all seen this plan. It's up everywhere. If you've been in our office, you've seen it. If you've been to any of our open houses, you've seen it. When developers have open houses, you see it. This is really what makes or breaks us as an office and builds you as a community. I'm just going to answer, and Pansy fortunately jotted them down to me, sort of the 4 key questions that we always get asked. And then in the Q&A if there's more questions, but these are the ones that always come to us. And the first one, sort of obvious, is who is making the planning decisions here? The planning decisions have been, as Gordon explained the history, it's been an iterative process with ourselves, the community, Simon Fraser University, and the City of Burnaby all the way through. We're now at a point where, other than the High Street neighborhood, so Cornerstone, Centre Block, the Hub, and the future Parcel 24, every other site in this community is zoned already in terms of its density, how much you can build on the site, in terms of its maximum height, so the total allowable height on the site, and the maximum number of units allowed on the site. So those are all done. Every project up here now simply goes through what is called an amendment rezoning for form of development. So a developer is obligated, when they lease a parcel of land from us, and many of you, I recognize lots of faces here, I've spoken to lots of you, is required by the municipality, City of Burnaby, through an amendment rezoning, to hold one public open house for anywhere between 2 to 3 hours, usually in the early evening hours. That's sort of a defined program by the City of Burnaby. And they receive comments, queries, complaints, accolades, whatever the community that shows up to these open houses want to give them. They're required to record those. You'll often, if you've been to one, again, I recognize many of you, you're offered a sheet where you can actually fill in comments, or the developer is just listening to you and taking comments. They submit that to the City of Burnaby. That forms part of the record of consultation with the City of Burnaby and the public. City of Burnaby takes those, works with the developer to incorporate what they feel is valid and reasonable and should be included, and then it goes to municipal council for the public hearing. The public hearing is the next opportunity for the community or anybody in the City of Burnaby or elsewhere to speak to the project in support or against, or to raise other concerns theoretically related to the project, but often about larger community issues or concerns. And then council has the opportunity at that point to either move the project forward or to hold the project until certain questions are answered or resolved. So that is really the process for everything that's left in the community. The question of what is left in the community, of course, in terms of the trust's responsibility, is we really only have 3 parcels remaining to lease. Parcel 24, so the last of our High Street parcels, is currently out for what we call RFP, request for proposals. We're expecting those back mid-November. And then we'll have a fairly lengthy negotiation process because, as we've all heard tonight, Parcel 24 is a very interesting and complex project. It's the last High Street parcel. It'll have commercial retail. It'll have SFU amenities and facilities. It will have residential housing. And it could have, and what we've asked for in the RFP is for developers to consider things like affordable housing or seniors housing in the community to start filling in those blanks as we get close to the end. So it's a very complex project. We likely won't even have an announcement for a developer until well into the new year, and then that whole public review process begins. Now, Parcel 24, I said the exclusion of the High Street is an unzoned site. So all of our High Street parcels were designed that way by the City of Burnaby and by the SFU Community Trust from the outset, so that they could be flexible and adapt to the needs of a community that's growing over time. So you'll have noticed, you know, the Cornerstone, we jumped right in and did that. We did it as rental housing to get some immediate population up here. And then we wanted to be able to control retail early on, to subsidize retail, to support it, and to help hopefully curate that mix of retail and learn from it. And then all of a sudden with the Hub building, we were like, okay, now is the time to release the Hub building. What do we really need? We need a grocery store. Grocery stores have very specific floor plates, and even the long configuration of this site is not a perfect grocery floor plate, but it's designed to accommodate that use. So we knew that was the time to contemplate a grocery store. So again, we worked with developer selection and with folks like Nesters to provide the appropriate amenity to service that. Centre Block came along. That was really the project in our dense urban center that signified to me anyways, and I think to Gordon, we went from, I think Gordon says this, we went from building buildings to building community. And that was concurrent with, and I'll talk about this in a second, 2010 rezoning, where all of a sudden, you know, everybody thought this was going to be one of those communities where first-time home buyers would buy a home, or downsizers would buy a home. Have a cold winter, all of a sudden 9 months later a baby would arrive, and people would move to the suburbs, sort of the conventional thinking we had in planning through the 90s and early 2000s. Well, all of a sudden, as Gordon noted, there was a daycare, then there was an elementary school, then there was a grocery store, and we heard the Halloween story, which is actually a story whenever I give a tour, I'm like, you should come up here on Halloween, because that's sort of what did I call it to the last tour, Danny? An indicator species, you know, for community health, is that there's actually children out on the street at Halloween. And so Center Block was really where we went, let's really try to integrate family housing in a really high density project and indicate that we are serious about families in this community, that families are growing up differently in the Lower Mainland. And then it also, of course, allowed us to look at that second floor commercial space where we hoped we would be able to finally attract those office or service type uses that are real community needs, like a medical office. I mean, I mean, we're surprised that we're negotiating potentially for the entire floor plate to be a medical facility. But even if that's not successful, there's still a welcome space for medical and other, you know, holistic health or additional child facilities in that building. And so that's where we're at with 24 now. So 24, we're like, okay, this is the last one. What are we missing? What do we really need? And then all of a sudden, the campus shows up with this amazing concept of East Gateway. You know, everybody that's arriving to the campus now arrives at this end of the campus. So this is a building that doesn't just speak to UniverCity. This is a building that speaks to SFU. And so it's a very complex process that'll go through a very complex rezoning. So that's who's making the decisions. So the decisions are sort of done for all intents and purposes, but you still have a public input role in that decision making through these open houses. And actually, I think we have one next week. Danny, do you remember the day? I hate to put you on the spot. November 8th is the open house for Hamilton? For Hamilton, yeah. I'm trying to remember the name. All I know is parcel numbers. So Hamilton, parcel 19, will have its public open house, I think 4 to 7 in their display center. I'll be there to answer any questions about the community questions in relation to Hamilton. So anyways, that's part of that process. So what is the role of the trust? So our role now is just to steward this along, just to keep it going, make sure that in 2023, when Gordon said, you know, Gordon just talks about closing the door and walking away, but I sort of want to make sure you have a street to drive on and a sidewalk to walk on. So that's really, you know, we try. New neighborhood park, right? That I don't think that was on the list, or it might have been on the list, but the new neighborhood park will start construction next year. So those are all, we're sort of building all the plug-in pieces of the community. So that's our role over the next 4 years, is really to make sure that you have a sidewalk to walk on and a park to play in. And to make sure that you all have Lou Pelletier's email and phone number. The role of Simon Fraser University is to be your neighbor and to be a good neighbor. And SFU will always have an integrated role in this community. The next neighborhood park, and I can say this maybe because the city is not here, we're not totally enamored with Richard Bolton Park and the maintenance of a municipal park. We are up the hill. Sometimes the city does tend to forget about that park, and we have to call and say, you know, can mow the lawn. And so SFU will be owning and managing the neighborhood park as an asset to the community. It also allows us to be creative and build some youth-oriented facilities and, you know, do things maybe a little differently than a conventional municipal park. That's all approved. The design is on the website, and it's been approved in our 2010 rezoning. SFU also owns all of the primary, and there's another plan that I'll get to, but SFU owns all of the primary access onto the campus because they manage emergency response for the campus. And so Tower Road, the High Street, are essentially your SFU-owned streets, right? They're managing that asset on your behalf. So while you do pay your taxes to the City of Burnaby, I'm sure SFU would love to get some of your tax dollars because you really are migrating your life on a lot of SFU streets from now and into perpetuity. But that's really the role. And then the City of Burnaby is really everything else. If you didn't live here and you lived down on Hastings, what do you think the city should provide for you? That's how you should think. You're no different than somebody living on Hastings. You know, you just live up the hill in a beautiful, wonderful environment. Maybe they're jealous of that. But nonetheless, you're privy to all of those same services and responsibilities. I just want to talk about the density transfer, because this is the other question we get, is Gordon showed that original Hodson model. And the infrastructure you saw, the way the streets are, the way the community is laid out, is almost identical. We've held true to that plan. But in 2010, doing these Mustel surveys that we do, because if you remember, census data wasn't very good with the previous government. So we started doing these community census to understand who was here. And we did realize we had a bit of a baby boom going on. So we consulted with the community. We had one of these forums in this gym. And the number one thing we heard, other than liquor store, was family-oriented housing or ground-oriented housing, or not even traditional, conventional family-oriented housing, just 3 bedrooms, for God's sakes, is I think what people were saying. And so what we said is, okay, we've got south-facing land, larger site potential. We've got land that's on the north, smaller sites, more akin to higher forms of development. So we went to the City of Burnaby with your support coming out of that public meeting and said, okay, our average density, and you don't need to understand what I'm saying, but our average density is 1.7 FAR floor area ratio. So what would happen if we kept it at 1.7, but we increased the West Highlands to 2.2 FAR and reduce the slopes to about 1.2 FAR. You still add up all the units, you still add up all the approvable height, and you're still at 1.7 FAR. So we're not breaking any rules here. We don't need to go to an official community plan amendment, which would take about 20 million years with any municipality. And they agreed with that. And so what happened is we suddenly had building heights go from 10 stories to up to 20 stories. As you'll see, parcel 20 around the water tower will be 20 stories. And it is to accommodate a higher density form of development, ground-oriented podium townhouses, and lots of them when you see parcel 20 plan and others, lots of townhouses, but still high density residential living. No one's hiding from that. The exchange was down in the slope neighborhood. We're able to lower those densities. So those would have all been typical 4 to 6 story double-loaded corridor condo buildings. Nothing wrong with that form of development, but not a lot of ground-oriented housing, or not a lot of the stuff that we saw in Lift, where it's a courtyard with stacked townhouses, which also accommodates families. So what you're going to see down in this neighborhood, or what we're hoping to see down in this neighborhood, and you'll see it with Mosaic's proposal here, of course, is double-loaded building and then a significant community of townhomes, much like we see in Serenity. What we hope that Intergolf is working on down here, and no one's seen the plans yet, but the site area, again, will work with ground-oriented forms of housing, probably in a condo or an apartment-style building, and then additional townhouses, much as Mosaic has done, backing onto the green belt. 33 is a very urban site. We're not going to see it there. It gets a lot of traffic volume. So we've let it be a street-fronting, urban-style building. And then our last 2 parcels, 36, 37, again, will go out to the developer field. And we'll be looking for homes that really do focus on ground-oriented housing. So that was the whole, you know, when people come to us and say, well, what happened to the 10 stories? Well, what happened was a really conscious decision to ensure this wasn't a community of just one building type, a ton of 700 to 800 square foot 2-bedroom units, but to have a real diversity of housing types. So that was the history behind that, and that's why the zoning is where it's at right now. And then, of course, all of these buildings continue to meet our green building guidelines, which is now a bylaw enforced by the City of Burnaby. So, you know, your homes are a little healthier and happier than a standard home in a standard market community. It's typically more energy efficient, more water efficient. It's up to you to close the windows and turn the heat down. But the building is the tool for you to do that in. So this is another map that you'll get familiar with if you haven't seen it, and it's evolving. This is probably not 100% correct as we're working through the nuances. And this is really the roadmap, literally, of ownership. So do you call Lou, or do you call, you know, Ian's here from SFU Planning, do you call Ian, is really the map, because we're gone. And so as I noted, all the bold purple, that's SFU. So what is that? Those are arterials. It's really an easy way to think about it. If I was an ambulance driver trying to get up here as fast as possible, you know, what way am I going to come up the mountain? Those will always remain in SFU's control, so they can make sure those streets are clean, well maintained, the snow is removed off of them quickly and efficiently. So that's pretty straightforward to remember. The Muse, interestingly, is an SFU street because the City of Burnaby didn't want it. It's too narrow, it's pavers, it's too weird, it's not to a municipal standard, but it's a pretty cool street that we wanted to try. The community wanted to try in the public consultation. It's sort of cool when you're walking there and somebody has to give you a little friendly beep beep on the horn because you're walking down the middle of the street because you sort of forgot it was a street. So you can see why City of Burnaby didn't really want it either, but it functions really well, and it allows us to experiment with stormwater management and a lot of our other initiatives. So that will remain an SFU street because it is a demonstration street that's outside of what's called the MMCD, the Municipal Master Development Specifications. So that it doesn't really meet quote-unquote code, but an institution like SFU can get away with experimenting. And so it is an experiment. If you notice the new Muse, there's really, other than no parking signs, which are a little crazy, there's no signage, there's no yield, there's no stop, there's no speed limit. It really is, we're trying to see the idea, the European idea of the self-mitigating street. If there's no sign, are people immediately just a little more wary of what's going on? You know, and knock on wood, it's working well. The yellow is the City of Burnaby. So, you know, Richard Bolton Park and the majority of the pathways in the community are the City of Burnaby's responsibility. So, if you live on the existing part of University Crescent and you want a speed bump, Gordon Harris in his pocket. So, your residence on a City of Burnaby street. So that's a local area improvement, and we've worked with you folks before. We've given you the information. There is a way to have speed control. We agree. We probably want to have speed bumps on that street. We're supporters of that. And I can tell you that on the rest of the streets we're building, so the dashed yellow lines, those are still in construction, so we have not handed them over to the City of Burnaby yet. We will build those with speed bumps so that the City of Burnaby just gets streets with speed bumps. And they've signed off on that design. We actually can't go onto the existing street and put in speed bumps because it's not our street anymore. It is a City of Burnaby street. So that's a process between the community and the City of Burnaby to negotiate. But certainly when we put the final lift on all of the other streets marked in yellow, they will have speed bumps on them. Pathways, again, noted in yellow, are City of Burnaby. Again, there are some purple pathways, primarily non-asphalt pathways, that will remain in the realm of SFU, more of the forest experience. So that leads us into, it's almost November, snow's going to probably come tomorrow. So snow removal. So who do you call if the snow removal isn't happening as quickly as you want it to? So it's sort of an interesting one, right? Because there are these gray areas, and these are the things that we're all going to work together. So on city-owned streets, snow removal is the responsibility of the City of Burnaby. But the City of Burnaby contracts SFU to do their snow removal. So you still have to call the City of Burnaby and complain, because SFU is simply their contractor. You know, just like if Main Road was your contractor down in Vancouver. However, if you wake up in the morning and Tower Road is just a screaming mess of chaos, you're going to want to call SFU. So this is why we're trying to come up with these really simple graphic maps. And right now we've got about 5 of them that are coming together. And we really hope the owner's manual is 5 maps. And then there's a whole bunch of writing that no one's going to read because the maps were so clear to you. And everything will have Lou's phone number on it. And a couple other phone numbers. But that's really what we're trying to work through, is to help you understand who to call when there's a situation like snow removal and other items. So I think I've done that. Pansy is also working very hard on developing the first cut at a true, you've sort of had this working contact list through the Community Association, but it's like 3 pages. Like, really, who's going to look at that, right? So we're just trying to go, really, who are the key contacts at Simon Fraser University? Who are the key contacts at the City of Burnaby? And for now, who are the key contacts in our office? So if you do have a question, you might not nail the right person on that call, but you're going to nail the person that's going to get you the right person. So we're just trying to spiral down that wild goose chase. So Pansy's working on that. So I think that's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Dale. Thank you, Dale, very much. Thank you, Gordon. Thank you, Elizabeth and Joanne, for talking with us today. Before we move on to questions, I want to thank somebody who has been very integral to this whole thing coming together, and that's Pansy Huey. Thank you very much. We wouldn't be able to do any of this without you. Okay, so we've gone a little over time, but we still want to dedicate at least like 20 minutes to questions. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. Danny has a mic. If you have a particular person directed to. If not, we have people from the gardening committee here. We have Drew and Jeff. We also have people from the granting committee. Brad to answer questions. So if you have a question, raise your hand, and Danny will come find you. Okay. Karen.
Hi there. Over the last decade, I believe less than 10% of units have been 3 bedrooms or greater. I'm wondering if that's high density has contributed to the 4-month rental churn of student housing and increase in property crime and the grow-ops that have actually sprung up in the community that have been gotten by the RCMP. And if the slopes is the plan to mitigate that, or if it's perhaps too late to worry about it now.
Who'd like to take that one? Dale?
Sure. I mean, our goal is certainly, like I said, originally this whole neighborhood was zoned 10 stories, 1.7 FAR, double-loaded corridor condo buildings. So the form of development really would have been predominantly 1- and 2-bedroom condominiums, which works for one level of population, but not multiple levels of population. It's still a high-density community. It's not a community of suburban-style townhouses and single-family homes. So the slopes won't change any of that. But what the slopes will change is, you know, one of our touchstone projects is Serenity. I mean, it works very well as primarily a stacked townhouse form, right? It looks like it's townhouses, but it's townhouses typically over apartments. Lyft really did it well in a courtyard environment. Verdant works wonderfully as family-oriented housing. And so what we have done on the slope side of things is when we subdivided and created those parcels, we made sure those parcels were big enough to accommodate that form of housing. So they would accommodate a courtyard style of development, or they would accommodate a split building where you may have an apartment building and then townhouses, but really maximizing frontage, what we call frontage, ground-oriented street frontage, as many front doors as possible, because those lend themselves to being more family-oriented units. So really the objective is, yes, more 3-bedroom houses. Will 50% of UniverCity be 3-bedroom houses when we're done? No, that's an impossibility because of where we're at in the process. But in 2010, we did a full stop. And if you'll remember, if you've lived here for a long time, there was a period there where it felt like there wasn't much going on at UniverCity. And it was because we were coming out of the 08 downturn, and we used that time to reconsider what the Mistel surveys and the community was telling us, which was more 3-bedroom housing. But the Slopes is not all 3-bedroom. It's still a mixed, diverse community, but with a greater percentage. And I would say, and I don't have the numbers until the projects are done, but I will be seeing well over 30% of those homes as 3 bedrooms.
Great. Who next? Maya?
Did you get all your... Thank you. So I really appreciate this. And one of the questions that I am seeking just for clarification is around how we can most effectively work together. So I understand that there has been a lot of Dale, as you said, a lot of the decisions have been made. So I'm actually looking for some guidance about what decisions have not been made, or where do you feel that as a community, people who live here, who are raising families here, we can really feed effectively into the process and have an impact on outcomes. So the information is helpful, but I still feel like I would love to know where can we actually have meaningful conversations where our voices can actually change outcomes rather than just receive information. And so that guidance would be helpful, because then I know where to channel my energy and where to leave you to do the business you're doing, and where we can constructively engage as citizens up here. And we have a particular reason why we need to answer that question, apart from everything else, is we're spanning these regional district challenges and many kind of, domains of like spheres of responsibility and so on. So your very clear guidance on this is what I'm asking for, and I think it will be very helpful for us going forward to constructively interact.
Thank you, Maya. It's definitely of the goal of the UCA to try to clarify some of these things, like as a community body, to figure out who do we need to talk to for, do we need to talk to the city, do we need to have a special interest group, do we need to talk to the trust, and try to make these things very clear. Gordon, do you want to add something to that?
I think it's a great question, and I like that answer because it really is about the people in this room playing a more active role, and through the community association that is well underway. And so where can you have a meaningful, make a meaningful contribution to the conversation? Without being glib, you've been doing it since the beginning, and it really has helped shape. And that was a really pivotal point Dale mentioned in 2010 that set the stage for much of what you're seeing today. Things like the gondola, if that is something the community wants to see, please get involved. We do have been doing the Mistel Research Group survey every 2 years. There's one coming up by the end of the year, I believe. Please take part in that. Encourage your neighbors to take part in that. If we don't hear what people are saying, we can't know how to best respond. And work with the UniverCity Community Association. It's really important to the well-being of the community. We're around for a little while longer. You're around for a long time. And so engage with the city, engage with the university, think about those things that are community building, whether it's transit and transportation, whether it's getting involved in the school and the PAC. You're going to be a community of between 9,000 and 10,000 people one day. You're going to be the size of Nelson, BC. You're going to be the size of a lot of other communities in the province. And you're sitting up here on Burnaby Mountain with the distinct benefit of having a neighbor like SFU and being in a larger city that has the resources, the community facilities and amenities elsewhere that you can benefit from. So just keep talking to people. Make sure that we have more meetings than this.
I appreciate that. And I just wanted to say, we have wonderful charts where you're asking us what is our vision, what do we love. So I took it over to where the children are, and I asked them to fill in their thoughts. So they're busy over there drawing pictures and writing their thoughts.
That's wonderful.
So we do want that, but then I want to be able to go home or go to those children after and say, okay, you want this, you want that. This is what we can do. This is who we talk to. This is, if you have a vision for what a healthy community for children looks like, this person is going to pick up the phone and talk to us, and you're actually going to be able to manifest that vision you have. So I guess I'm asking for more teeth than that, because I want to know when I'm telling my child or I'm being involved in things, we can't make an impact on what's going to happen here in the slopes or how the streetscape is going to look like here. But this piece of the plan and this piece are still undecided and open for consultation. I can take you there and we can be heard. So that's what I'm looking for, some real guidance, like where you're really going to have room for us to impact, and where the project is already underway, and that's not really a great place for us to focus our energy because the case is kind of closed.
Yeah, thank you for that. And one of the goals of the UCA that we really want to see is highlighting November 8th is it a rezoning, or what is the?
Public information meeting.
Public information meeting. So we want to have more of a hub where we have that information coming out to the community. So Christy spearheaded a communications committee on our community association. So we see that as part of our role. We're working towards having a website where we can take in information. This isn't the last town hall. We want to do another one, I hope in February, where we can focus on, let's say, more safety issues around tank farm evacuation, invite the RCMP up here, invite the fire department. But I think going to those sessions and going to those open houses is really critical, so we really want to make sure that people have that information where to go. Rudy? Thank you, Maya. Go ahead, Rudy.
What you got tonight? Yonks, Queens Na, Kayachton, Stotmouth, Townhall. Just want to remind everyone my English name is Rudy Reimer. Yunks is my Squamish ancestral name, and we're on Coast Salish unceded territory. This is not SFU territory property. I've heard a lot of people say that tonight. This is unceded ancestral territory of Squamish Nation, Tsleil-Waututh, and others. So I just want to say that. And I don't want to get political about that. I just want to remind everyone about that. So thank you, everyone, for the good words tonight. This is a good gathering. We're coming together to have a good mind, a good heart about this. I am very concerned about our community. I've been here almost 10 years. I've made a lot of friends, family. It's good to see a good turnout here. So in that regards, it's really good to know what the future or potential future of this place is going to be. And I have some concerns, particularly about safety, and it's kind of been brought up tonight. Someone just mentioned we're going to be the size of Nelson. What happened in Nelson and other communities in the interior over the last 2 years with forest fires? We're a secluded community. And not just in terms of the tank farm, but what's around us. We're secluded from the rest of the city of Burnaby, and we have no safety, we have no policing, we have no fire hall, we have no medical facilities. And so for me, I'm concerned about this, not just for myself, but my family, my friends, my neighbors. We need something in this future planning. You know, it's great to talk about housing and expanding 3-bedroom, what have you, for families. But this past week, I've just witnessed multiple instances of the fire trucks and ambulances coming up here, and it takes a long time. And so emergency services, in terms of broader planning in the future, I would really like to see some implementation in this space. That we're looking at this map, right? And we're talking about there's going to be 10,000 people. If we're going to be the same, considered to be the same as a small town in the middle of the interior BC, why should we not have the same services? We pay our taxes, we're good citizens. This is a community, we're beside a university that has 20 to 30,000 students per day. And so I don't want to even get into that. So I just want to bring that up for food for thought. We need a little more thought. It's just not about residential. It's not just about commercial. There's something else. Because I'm faculty, I'm a father, I can't go to the medical services on campus because I'm denied. That's just for students, right? So we are part and not a part of the community. But we have to find a way to live together. So just in that vein of being good mind, good heart, let's try and work together that way. Thank you. What you got?
Thank you, Rudy. Thank you, Rudy. We have another. Ryan?
Hi there, my name's Ryan Stewart. My spouse and I are renters in Altitude, and I'm told in this new life of mine I can't ever hold a microphone in front of a crowd without introducing myself as a new Burnaby School trustee-elect following the last election. In the sort of original planning documents and still in the bylaws for the Community Association, there's mention of housing cooperatives, and I know that was part of the original vision. I'm wondering if, knowing that the number of remaining parcels is relatively small, we've got a provincial government that seems more interested in investing in affordable housing than the previous one, at risk of being very blatantly political. I know the Cooperative Housing Federation of BC got vocal in the most recent Burnaby election. So to cut to the chase, any prospect of a housing co-op before the community is all built out? Thank you.
Take that, Gordon.
Thanks for the question. And just before I get to it, I just want to thank Rudy again for those comments and all noted. Thank you very much for that. We have looked at co-ops. We've tried very hard over the years to find a group that might be interested. We thought with Parcel 33 we might have a form of co-op. It didn't materialize. They're very hard projects to get launched. But one of the things that has been very successful here and is now starting to be mimicked elsewhere is Verdant and that notion of an appreciation cap or a shared equity model of home ownership. And one thing we are exploring today is there an opportunity with the last two wood frame residential parcels here to introduce an updated version of Verdant? That was 10 years ago. It worked well. The mechanism for sale and resale is well established now. And so we're looking at that, not precluding the idea of a co-op or some other form of ownership. But my sense is, despite the current apparent level of interest in co-ops, it's a very tough hurdle to get over. The Verdant model, 60 suites, we know works well, very popular, and so that may be what we look to developers to deliver for us, maybe in combination with market housing, maybe entirely like the Verdant model of appreciation cap homes. And if we can combine that with, as Dale described, those ground-oriented, family-oriented homes with that added benefit of also capping the price at some discount to market and allowing that discount to be held in place perpetually through resale, it may not be a co-op, but it's a pretty good approach to affordable home ownership. So we're still trying, and with land costs, development costs, everything that everybody in this room knows about and doesn't need to be told, it's hard to do a project that is truly affordable. We think the Verdant model might get us as close as anything will. Thanks.
Thanks. Thank you, Ryan. I saw another question. Elliot?
Yeah, this is really probably for Gordon and Dale, but we've had our local MP come out recently say he'd endorse moving that tank farm. We've had the mayor-elect come out as of yesterday with an article in the Globe and Mail saying it's a priority for him. I suspect most of the residents here see it as an existential threat, would like to have it moved. I was kind of hoping that the trust, with your experience in development and with the city, might be able to help us making it the case for moving that tank farm, and how it would increase the value of your asset.
I'm happy to take that. I was very intrigued by Member of Parliament Terry Beach's notion that maybe that is a redevelopment site and the tank farm goes elsewhere. It's still a tank farm. It'll still be somewhere. So moving problems isn't necessarily always the answer. It might be very expensive to do. On the other hand, it's certainly worth investigating further. We look at the Expo lands in downtown Vancouver. That was heavily polluted industrial land that is now home to thousands and thousands of people. I wouldn't rule it out. I would like to know more about the idea and how it might work. But I know there's been some strong reaction in the media to the suggestion. I would be, as a urban... No, I didn't see it, no. But the notion of, I've been an urban planner for 30 plus years. I've been involved in development for almost as long. I think any idea like that deserves paying attention to. So I would not dismiss it out of hand. I'd explore it, look at the viability and feasibility. It would be a long-term play, but the best time to start something that takes a long time is now, not later. So worth looking at.
We're very fortunate, too, that we have our MP, Terry Beach, has been quite vocal, and also Hurley, our new mayor-elect, seems quite vocal, so I feel very hopeful. And we reached out to Mayor Hurley, but he's not mayor yet, so he couldn't come tonight, but we anticipate, we hope for the next town hall that we will have we'll have Lou Pelletier, we'll have people from the city, people from the fire department and our CMP to have a lot more in-depth conversations about this. So I'm aware of the time and that people have kids and things like that, so we have time for one more question. Gary.
Actually, we had
Oh, great. Okay, well, let's do Gary's question and then have the kids come up. Okay, kids, come on up. Arwen, bring it on up. Let's hear it for the kids.
All right, this is awesome. So what are you going to tell us about? You're going to tell, oh, you're going to hold this?
Yeah.
All right, go for it. Speak.
So we're going to present our ideas that would make this neighborhood better, like super fun slide. Thank you. What kids want at University City, like a horse stable and an exercising park, a big green field, and things that can make this area a better place where you can make things happy and yeah. What people want at this place is an ice cream shop. And videos, games, and video games for the whole and the environment. We would like the environment to be a better place. Stop throwing garbage on the ground and put it in the garbage bins. Thank you.
That was wonderful. Leave it to the young children to remind us of what's really important, like candy.
That's really hard to follow, Gary. I hope you got a good question. Do we have the mic, Danny? Oh,
he actually had his...
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Hi, just had two questions. One is going to be very short as to does SFU commit to still providing access to the university residents in terms of the library and various amenities around there post-community trust? The other thing is I've lived up here 7.5 years and it seems like every single time I talk to somebody, they have a different idea of what's going to happen to the water tower. I realize that it is an iconic thing in the community, but especially with regard to like a fire hall, I'm just saying there's a giant amount of water sitting in a tower. So.
There's no water anymore.
Well, on the first point, do we have an answer on the for university residents who are not SFU people still having access to the gym and library?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So the SFU is committed to giving all residents who live in the community access to the library and the gym, as well as the museum, I believe. Not the museum, the art gallery. Thank you. So the way to do that is to get a community card from the trust, take that into the library, they will give you a library card. And you can use that to also access the gym, as far as I know. And if you have any questions about that, contact the trust, and they are the ones who are administering that program, or contact us, and we'll help get that solved. Because yes, and hopefully it'll be even better. It's one of my personal initiatives to make sure that that connection gets made. I'm a librarian, so access is very important to me. I've already been talking to the public library of Burnaby, saying, "Excuse me, but you are not getting service here." So that's definitely something that's on our radar. And about the water tower, I'm not going to speak to that.
Thanks very much. The question about access to the SFU facilities is the only question Lou Pelche couldn't have answered tonight. So on the water tower, it has an economic life. It has not reached the end of that economic life, but we have committed to the City of Burnaby that in the fullness of time, there will be supplementary water storage needed. And at that time, when supplementary water storage cells are created, why not then also create the cells that would allow the removal of the water tower? And so it would be in-ground storage, roughly at the edge of Richard Bolton Park. And it's not going to happen right away, but it is going to happen. We have bonded for it. The commitment has been made, and when we get to that point where either the water tower needs to be replaced or we're at the point where the increased population is driving demand for more water than is currently stored. That'll be the trigger point for the ultimate replacement of the water tank.
Thank you. All right, Gary, you're up. No pressure.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Gary. I'm one of the directors on the University Community Association, and the topic I'd like to speak on is a potential of a new dog park at University. I've been on the community here for about 10 years, and at every event in the community I've gone to, I've heard this question raised. I've also spoken to some people here earlier this evening, and at previous consultations with Gordon, mentioned with merchants and other community groups, that was actually, a dog park was actually one of the top 3 things that people were foreseeing. So currently, myself and my colleague Mario, who had to go earlier, we're actually starting a online survey to advocate for something like this on the mountain. I think that it would be a great opportunity for the community to connect in a public space, more green space for our community. There's advantages as well for a cleaner community and a safe place for everyone to be in. Yeah, and the question I would pose to SFU and also the Community Trust is I will be going to the city to advocate on behalf of our community, and as you saw at the door, there's a little poster. If you scan your phone, you can go to the survey and help support this cause. I'd like to ask SFU Trust and also SFU, how can you support us in one of these initiatives that we would like to bring forth?
Yeah, I would like you to suggest, I would like to suggest that you go to the campus, what is it called, Burnaby 2065 Campus Master Plan website, and do the survey and suggest that to the team that is working on the long-range plan for the campus. We do see a lot more dogs on campus, both those who are in the university and those, I bring my dog to work 3 days a week, so but I also walk my dog on all the trails, and I think we do have an incredible place to bring dogs, and people do come from elsewhere to walk their dogs on the lands already. So there is, you know, there is that out there. At least we've got that, and that is a real big benefit. I also note that if you go to Seattle, the center of Seattle, where the Amazon development is, there's a dog park that's about the size of this seating area. And they, you know, they're building those sorts of things in urban areas now, but they come with an expense, and yeah, but there are a lot of new things out there. I don't believe Burnaby's bringing them to us, though, and they may have their rationale around that. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you very much. Well, I got to say, this is quite an event for our first town hall. We were really worried that no one was going to show up, and I'm so heartened to see so many of you here that have come to speak and ask questions and listen and participate. So many of you are so involved and on committees, so really thank you, and a round of applause to all of you in our community. And a special thank you to Gordon, Elizabeth, Joanne, and Dale for coming and speaking to us today. As part of our event, we have an evaluation form at the front at the welcome desk. We would really, really love to hear from you. What other topics would you like to hear us talk about? What kind of accessibility needs do you have? What was useful tonight? What wasn't? There's an online version, and even if you just have other questions you want to send us our way, please do that. Thank you so much for coming, and we look forward to seeing you all again next time. Thank you.